Mara
We
Granger
have to
stood in the
go.
Red Creek
Now,
courthouse
they're coming
watching
for us.
deputies drag a screaming
Hurry, for the
8-year-old
baby's
boy
sake.
toward the door. Her son,
I don't know if I can do this.
well, her stepson,
but
but
I
he was
have to
hers now.
try.
The judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Custody is hereby granted to Ruth Whitmore. Patterson, the cattle baron who'd burned her barn and threatened her children, smirked from the back row. She had 3 days to save this boy, 3 days to destroy the most powerful man in Wyoming territory. And the only weapon she had was the truth spoken by a crippled woman nobody believed. But to understand how Mara got to this impossible moment, standing between a corrupt judge and a child who'd finally learned what love felt like, we need to go back to a train station in Omaha, to the day a stranger spit on her boot and told her she shouldn't be breeding, to 2 loaves of bread that would build a kingdom. If you enjoy stories of underdogs who refuse to quit, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This one's going to shake you. Great-grandma, why are you crying? Mara Granger, 48 years old in 1878, watched a young woman limp past the memorial crowd. The woman was heavy, her gait uneven, her eyes fixed on the ground as voices whispered around her. Too fat. What a shame, can't even walk properly. The words were different from 40 years ago, but the cruelty was the same. I'm crying, sweet girl, Mara said, pulling Emily Jr. close because I'm remembering the day I almost gave up. The day I arrived at a ranch with nothing but a crutch, a daughter, and 2 loaves of bread I'd baked to prove I was worth hiring. Emily's eyes widened. Tell me. Mara looked at the Lincoln statue at the face of a man who'd been called ugly his whole life, but built a nation anyway. This is the story of how a woman society deemed worthless built a kingdom from flour and fire. The spit hit Mara's boot just as the train whistle screamed. She stared at the glistening glob on the worn leather, her hands tightening on her crutch until her knuckles went white. The man who'd spit stood 3 feet away, his face twisted with disgust. Cripples shouldn't be breeding, he said loud enough for the entire platform to hear. What possessed a man to marry that? Beside her, Lily whimpered and pressed her face into Mara's skirt. The child was 6 years old and had already learned that her mother's body made strangers angry. Mara wanted to scream, wanted to use her crutch as a weapon and teach this man what real pain felt like. Instead, she bent down her bad leg, protesting every inch of movement, and wiped the spit from her boot with a handkerchief. She folded the cloth carefully, tucked it into her carpet bag, and met the man's eyes. A man with eyes that worked, she said. Her voice carried across the platform, steady as stone. A man who knew that worth isn't measured in how a body looks, but what it can do. A man better than you'll ever be. The crowd shifted. Some looked away. Others stared harder. The man's face reddened. Your husband's dead. Died running from his debts, I heard. Left you with nothing but that brat and a reputation. The words landed like fists. Mara felt Lily's small hand fist in her skirt, felt the child trembling. He died, Mara said quietly, saving people from typhoid, while you were spitting on widows at train stations. She turned away, pulling Lily with her. Every step on her twisted left leg sent pain shooting up her spine, but she kept her back straight and her head high. The crowd parted like water. Behind her, someone laughed. Mara stopped at the edge of the platform. In her carpet bag, wrapped in cloth, still faintly warm, were 2 loaves of sourdough bread. They were perfect. Golden crust, tender crumb, the smell of yeast and promise. They were all she had left of her mother's kitchen in Pennsylvania, of the life before Marcus, of the woman she'd been before the world decided she was too broken to matter. She opened the bag. Lily looked inside, her small face pinched with hunger they couldn't afford to satisfy. Mama, are we going to be hungry again? Mara didn't know. They had $3.47. The train ticket to Wyoming territory had cost $2. That left $1.47 for food, lodging, and whatever came next. She pulled out the newspaper clipping she'd kept folded in her pocket for 3 weeks. Ranch cook wanted, no experience necessary, room and board provided, must be able to handle rough men and rougher conditions. Apply in person to Granger Ranch, Red Creek, Wyoming territory. At the bottom in small print, widowers and families need not apply. Mara had written her application letter on stolen paper, sitting in the boarding house kitchen after everyone else had gone to bed. She'd lied. Said she was single, childless, experienced. Said she could start immediately. She'd signed it with hands that shook because she knew that lies had consequences, but starvation had worse ones. The train whistle screamed again. "We're going to be fine, baby," Mara said, closing the carpet bag. "Mama's going to make sure of it." She didn't believe her own words, but she said them anyway because mothers lied to their children when the truth was too heavy to carry. They boarded the train. The seats were hard, the car overcrowded, the air thick with smoke and unwashed bodies. Mara found a spot near the back away from the other passengers' stares. She lifted Lily onto the bench, then maneuvered herself up her crutch, clattering against the floor. A woman across the aisle made a small sound of disgust. Mara ignored her. She'd become good at that, ignoring. The train lurched forward. Omaha disappeared behind them, and with it the last familiar thing in Mara's world. Ahead was Wyoming territory, a place she'd never seen, a job she'd lied to get, a future built on bread and desperation. Lily leaned against her shoulder. "Mama, what if they don't want us? Then we'll find somewhere that does." "What if there isn't anywhere?" Mara looked out the window at the endless prairie rolling past, grass and ski and nothing else. It looked like the end of the world. "There's always somewhere, sweet girl. We just have to be brave enough to find it." The train rattled west. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky the color of fire and blood. Mara pulled Lily close and tried to believe that somewhere in all that emptiness was a place that would let them stay. She didn't know that the rancher who'd placed that advertisement had sworn never to let another woman near his heart. Didn't know his dead wife's mother was already sharpening her knives. Didn't know that her lies would save her life but nearly cost her everything else. All she knew was that she had 2 loaves of bread, a crutch, and a daughter who needed her to be stronger than she felt. It would have to be enough. The train journey took 3 days. Mara spent them teaching Lily to read using the newspapers other passengers left behind. She pointed to words like opportunity and frontier and westward, turning the articles into lessons, the advertisements into hope. Lily was quick. She'd inherited her father's sharp mind, his ability to absorb information like bread absorbed butter. By the second day, she was reading full sentences. "Mama, what's a rancher?" "Someone who raises cattle." "What's cattle?" "'Cause like the ones we saw in Pennsylvania." Lily frowned, thinking, will there be food there? The question stabbed through Mara's chest. Lily asked it every day now, sometimes multiple times. The child had learned that food wasn't guaranteed, that hunger came without warning, that adults couldn't always keep their promises. Marcus had died 8 months ago. The creditors had come 3 days after the funeral. They'd taken everything. The house, the furniture, his medical equipment, even Mara's wedding ring. They'd left her with the clothes on her back, a carpet bag, and a daughter who'd watched strange men carry her dead father's belongings out the door. Since then, they'd moved through boarding houses like ghosts. Mara took work where she could find it. Washing clothes, scrubbing floors, baking bread for the German bakery on 5th Street, where the owner paid her half what he paid the other bakers because, as he said, a cripple should be grateful for any work at all. She'd been grateful, right up until the day he tried to extract payment in forms other than money. She'd left that night, packed their bag, taken Lily, and walked out into Omaha's streets with nowhere to go. The advertisement had appeared the next morning, tucked in the corner of a newspaper someone had left on a bench. Mara had read it 3 times, her heart pounding harder with each word. Room and board provided. It meant shelter. It meant Lily wouldn't sleep on boarding house floors anymore, wouldn't wake up crying from cold. Must be able to handle rough men. Mara had been handling rough men her entire life. She could handle more. She'd written the application that night, mailed it the next day, waited 2 weeks for a response. The letter, when it came, was brief. Mrs. Hale, position available. Train ticket enclosed. Report to Granger Ranch by month's end. C. J. Granger. No warmth, no welcome. Just facts. Mara had cried when she read it. Not from joy exactly, but from relief so intense it felt like drowning in reverse. Now watching Wyoming territory unfold outside the train window, she wondered what she'd gotten them into. The prairie had given way to rolling hills, then to mountains that clawed at the sky like broken teeth. The air through the open windows smelled different here. Sage and dust and something wild that made her lungs ache. Lily pressed her face to the glass. Mama, look, it's so big. It was, bigger than anything Mara had imagined. Bigger than Pennsylvania's gentle hills, bigger than Omaha's cramped streets. This was a landscape that didn't care about people, didn't notice their smallness, didn't soften itself to accommodate their needs. Mara felt her stomach clench. What if she couldn't do this? What if her leg gave out? What if she couldn't keep up? What if Jake Granger took one look at her and sent them back? She pushed the thoughts away. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. The train pulled into Red Creek just after noon on the third day. The station was barely a station at all. Just a platform, a water tower, and a small building that might have been a ticket office or might have been someone's home. Mara gathered Lily in their bag. Moving down the train aisle was an exercise in humiliation. Her crutch caught on seat legs. Her bad leg dragged. Behind her she heard whispers. Look at that one. Poor child having a mother like that. Shameful traveling alone. She kept moving, one step then another, the crutch tapping rhythm that had become the soundtrack of her life. Outside the platform baked in afternoon sun. The heat hit Mara like a fist. This wasn't Pennsylvania's humid warmth or Omaha's prairie heat. This was something sharper, meaner, the kind of heat that peeled paint and cracked leather. Mama, I'm thirsty. I know, baby. We'll find water. The station building was locked. No one else had gotten off the train. Around them, Red Creek stretched small and dusty. A main street lined with false-fronted buildings, a church with peeling paint, a saloon that looked more permanent than anything else, and at the end of the street, a general store. Mara adjusted her grip on the carpet bag and started walking. Lily held her skirt with one hand, dragging her feet through the dust. They made it 3 steps before a voice called out, "You'd be Mrs. Hale." Mara turned. A man stood beside a wagon. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders broad enough to block the sun. Rope burns across the palms, calluses thick as leather knuckles that had been broken and healed wrong. This was C.J. Granger. It had to be. "I am," Mara said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. His gaze moved over her. Not cruelly, not with disgust, but with the same thorough assessment he might give a horse he was considering buying. She saw him register the crutch, the twisted leg, the width of her hips, the flour still dusted in her hair from baking on the train. His expression didn't change. "You didn't mention a child." Ice flooded Mara's veins. This was it. This was where he sent them back. "You didn't ask," she said. The words came out sharper than she intended. "I can do the work of 2 women. She won't be trouble." "It's not about trouble." "Then what's it about?" Caleb's jaw tightened. He looked at Lily, who'd hidden behind Mara's skirt, and something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or memory. "It's about—" He stopped, started again. "Children complicate things. Children need food and shelter. I can provide both if you give me the chance. That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" The silence stretched. Around them, Red Creek watched. Mara could feel eyes on her from the general store, from the saloon, from windows up and down the street. Finally, Caleb spoke. "1-week trial. You cook 3 meals a day for 15 men. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, supper at dusk. If they're satisfied, you stay. If not, I pay your train fare back and you leave. Deal." It wasn't what she wanted. She wanted security, promises, guarantees. But it was more than she had an hour ago. "Deal." Caleb nodded once. He moved to take her carpet bag. "I can carry it," Mara said. "Didn't say you couldn't." He took it anyway. His fingers brushed hers rough skin against her flour-dusted hands. The contact lasted less than a second, but Mara felt it like a brand. "Wagon's there," Caleb said, nodding to where 2 horses stood hitched. "It's an hour's ride to the ranch." He helped Lily up first, lifting the child like she weighed nothing. Then he turned to Mara. She wanted to refuse, wanted to prove she could do it herself. But the wagon bed was high, her leg was screaming, and pride was another luxury she couldn't afford. She handed him her crutch, let him brace her elbow, hauled herself up with muscles that burned from 3 days on a train. When she was seated, breathing hard, he returned her crutch without comment. The ride out of town was silent. Caleb drove with his eyes on the road, his hands easy on the reins. Mara watched the landscape unfold around them. Grass that went on forever. Mountains in the distance, their peaks still white with snow. Sky so big it made her dizzy. And silence. More silence than she'd ever heard. No city noise, no crowd chatter, no constant hum of civilization. Just wind and hoofbeats and the creak of wagon wheels. Lily fell asleep against her shoulder. After 30 minutes, Caleb spoke. Kitchens through the main room. You'll feed 15 men 3 times a day. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at noon, supper at dusk. He'd already said this. Mara didn't point it out. They eat quick and they eat a lot, he continued. They don't care what it tastes like as long as there's enough. I care what it tastes like. He turned to look at her, really look at her for the first time since the station. That's so. Food is the only thing that makes a hard day bearable. Might as well make it worth sitting down for. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. Most folks wouldn't say that. I'm not most folks. No. His gaze returned to the road. You're not. They rode in silence after that. Mara watched the ranch approach. Buildings appeared on the horizon, first small, then growing. A large main house, low and sprawling. A barn, a bunkhouse, corrals with horses, cattle dotting distant pastures. It looked like the edge of civilization, like the last place before the world fell off into nothing. It looked like home. The thought surprised her. She pushed it away. The wagon rolled into the yard. Men appeared from various directions, drawn by the sound of arrival. They gathered near the barn, watching. 15 pairs of eyes, all trained on her. Caleb helped Lily down first, then offered Mara his hand. She took it this time. Let him steady her as she maneuvered off the wagon, her crutch-finding purchase in the dirt. When she stood on solid ground, she could feel every eye assessing her. The silence was different than the train station's whispers. Heavier, more knowing. These were men who worked with their bodies. Men who understood what happened when bodies didn't work right. They were looking at her twisted leg, her crutch, her size, and calculating. Calculating whether she'd make it, whether she'd last, whether she was worth the trouble. Mara straightened her spine, looked back at them with eyes that didn't flinch. A few looked away. One man, older than the others with red-gray hair, nodded slightly. Men, Caleb said. His voice carried across the yard without rising. This is Mrs. Hale. She's cooking for us. You'll treat her with respect, you'll eat what she makes, and you'll keep your thoughts to yourselves. Clear, murmured agreement. Cookie, Caleb continued, looking at the red-haired man. You're on light duty till that shoulder heals. Show Mrs. Hale where everything is. Cookie stepped forward. Up close, Mara could see his left arm was bound against his chest, the shoulder wrapped in bandages. Ma'am, he said. His voice was rough, but not unkind. Kitchen's this way. Caleb caught Mara's eye. Supper's in 3 hours. Men will be hungry. Then he walked away, his boots heavy on the dirt, leaving her alone with Cookie and Lily and the weight of 15 men's expectations. Cookie led them inside. The main house was simple, wooden floors worn smooth by years of boot traffic, a long table surrounded by mismatched chairs, windows with faded curtains, everything clean but spare functional, without warmth. The kitchen beyond was larger than Mara had hoped. A cast-iron stove dominated one wall, its surface clean, its firebox empty. A deep sink with a pump. Shelves lined with tin plates and cups. A work table scarred from use but solid. And supplies. Flour in barrels, cornmeal, lard, dried beans, salt pork, canned tomatoes, molasses. Mara's hands itched to start working. Stove needs feeding every 2 hours when you're baking, Cookie said. Water pump gets temperamental. You have to work the handle 3 times before it catches. I'll remember. He showed her the larder, the dish storage, the small room off the kitchen. That's yours, bed and a window. Not much, but it's private. The room was barely big enough for the narrow bed and a small trunk, but it had a door that closed, a window with a view of the mountains, a space that would be hers. Lily's eyes went wide. Mama, we get our own room. We do, baby. Cookie cleared his throat. I'll leave you to it, ma'am. Anything you need, holler. He left. Mara stood in her new kitchen, listening to his footsteps fade, and tried to breathe past the tightness in her chest. 3 hours until supper. 15 hungry men. Her first test. She couldn't fail. If she failed, they'd be back on that train back to Omaha. Back to nothing. Lily tugged her skirt. Mama, what are you going to make? Mara looked at her daughter's pinched face, at the hope warring with fear in those green eyes. Looked at the stove, the supplies, the kitchen that could become theirs. Everything, she said. I'm going to make everything. She tied on an apron hanging from a peg, rolled up her sleeves, built a fire in the stove, coaxing flames until they burned steady and hot. Then she began to cook. Her hands moved through familiar patterns. Flour, salt, lard worked together until it resembled coarse meal. Milk added slowly until dough formed. She'd made these biscuits 1,000 times. Could make them in her sleep, had made them in worse conditions than this. While the dough rested, she started beans. Dried pintos into a pot with water, salt pork, onions from a hanging basket, a touch of molasses. They'd need hours to cook down into something worth eating. She had hours. The rhythm settled her. This she could do. This she was good at. Her leg might not work right, her body might not fit society's standards, but her hands knew their business. Lily sat at the work table watching. After a while, she asked, "Can I help?" Always. Mara showed her how to knead, how to feel when dough was ready, how to cut rounds with a tin cup pressing straight down so the biscuits would rise even. They worked in comfortable silence, mother and daughter flour dusting their hands, creating something from nothing. The biscuits went into the oven, golden rounds that would rise and brown and fill the house with the smell of home. Mara made gravy next, salt pork fried until crispy, the fat rendered out. Flour whisked into the drippings. Milk added slowly until it thickened into something rich and satisfying. Coffee, strong and black the way working men needed it. The light through the window had turned gold when she heard voices. Men returning from whatever work had occupied their day. Boots on the porch, the splash of water from the pump outside as they washed. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. She arranged everything on the long table. Biscuits piled high, beans in a serving bowl, gravy in a pitcher, coffee in tin cups at each place. Her hands shook slightly as she set down the last plate. They came in like a storm. 15 men bringing the smell of cattle and dust in exhaustion. The talking stopped when they saw her. Stopped completely, as if someone had stolen the air from the room. Mara kept her spine straight, her hands steady on the counter. She'd been stared at before. This was no different, except it was, because this time it mattered. "Food's ready," she said. Her voice didn't shake. "Better eat it hot." They sat, not quickly, not with enthusiasm, but they sat. Caleb came in last. He took the chair at the head of the table without ceremony. Didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her presence. Simply reached for the biscuits and began to eat. The others followed his lead. Mara retreated to the kitchen, busied herself with cleaning while they consumed what she'd made. She didn't need to watch to know how it was going. She'd learned to read the sounds, the scrape of forks, the pause when someone took a second helping, the rhythm of men eating food that exceeded their expectations. When she finally glanced toward the table, half the biscuits were gone. The beans were being scraped from the bowl. One man was sopping up gravy with his third biscuit, his expression somewhere between surprise and satisfaction. They didn't speak to her. When they finished, they stood, pushed their chairs back in, and filed out the way they'd come. Some nodded in her direction. Brief, awkward acknowledgments. Most didn't even do that. But every plate was empty. Caleb was the last to rise. He paused at the door, his hand on the frame, and looked back at her. "Same time tomorrow," he said. Then he was gone. Mara stood in her kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes and the lingering smell of good food. Her legs screamed with fatigue. Her back ached from standing. Her hands were raw from work. She lowered herself into one of the chairs, her crutch propped against the table, and allowed herself one moment of stillness. She'd done it. First meal, first test, passed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The men would talk. The town would hear that Caleb Granger had hired a crippled woman to cook. They would have opinions. They always did. But tonight in this kitchen, she had proven something she'd been proving her whole life. That worth wasn't determined by how a body looked, but by what it could do. She pulled herself up, reached for the first plate, and began to wash. Outside, the sun set over Wyoming territory, painting the sky the color of promises and blood. Mara Hale didn't know it yet, but she'd just taken the first step toward building a kingdom. All it had cost was everything she'd had left. All it would require was everything she'd become. The bread had saved the day, but the real test was still coming. And in Red Creek, a man named Hiram Patterson was already writing a telegram that would change everything. The days found their rhythm with surprising speed. Mara woke before dawn, her internal clock calibrated to the demands of feeding hungry men. The fire would be her first companion, crackling to life in the pre-dawn darkness. Then came the endless variations of breakfast. Biscuits and gravy, flapjacks with molasses, cornmeal mush, fried potatoes, eggs when the hens were cooperative. The men ate without comment. They filed in, consumed what she made, and left. No thank yous, no complaints. Just the steady rhythm of work and hunger and survival. Mara didn't expect more. She'd learned long ago not to expect anything from men except their appetites. But she noticed things. She noticed that Caleb always took the burnt biscuit if there was one, leaving the better ones for his men. She noticed that he ate last and left first, as if sitting at a table made him uncomfortable. She noticed the way his eyes tracked the room, always assessing, always aware of where everyone was and what they were doing. And she noticed that on her third day, there was a railing installed on the back porch steps. Fresh wood smooth under her palm when she went out to retrieve water. No one mentioned it, no one took credit. But Mara knew who'd done it. On her fourth day, Caleb handed her a list and enough money to cover it. Town's 5 miles. Cookie can drive you if your leg's bothering you. I can manage. His jaw tightened. Didn't say you couldn't. Then why offer because managing doesn't mean you have to do it alone. The words hung between them. Mara thought about pride, about independence, about all the times she'd insisted on doing things herself because accepting help meant admitting weakness. I'll take the wagon, she said finally, but I'll drive myself. Something that might have been approval flickered across Caleb's face. Fair enough. She took Lily with her. The child had been restless, confined to the ranch, asking questions about the mountains and the cattle and when they could explore. The drive to Red Creek was beautiful. Morning sun turning the grass gold, mountains sharp against blue sea, meadowlarks singing from fence posts. Lily pressed against her side, watching everything with wide eyes. Mama, is this ours? What do you mean, baby? The ranch, is it ours now? Mara's throat tightened. We work here. That's different than owning. But we get to stay if I keep cooking well enough. You cook better than anyone. The certainty in Lily's voice made Mara's eyes burn. Children believed in their mothers with a faith that had nothing to do with reality and everything to do with need. Red Creek appeared on the horizon, small, dusty, permanent, in the way frontier towns pretended to be. Mara tied off the wagon outside the general store and reached for her crutch. Lily scrambled down on her own, already staring at the buildings with curiosity. The store was dim after the bright sunlight. It smelled of sawdust and tobacco and pickles. A woman stood behind the counter, thin and sharp-featured, her hair pulled back so tight it seemed to lift her eyebrows. 2 other women browsed the shelves. Their conversation died the moment Mara entered. Help you. The shopkeeper's tone walked the line between courtesy and dismissal. I have a list from the Granger Ranch. Mara approached the counter, laying the paper down. The woman's eyebrows rose. Then you're the new cook. I am. Huh. She picked up the list, scanning it with pursed lips. Heard Caleb hired someone. Didn't hear it was. She trailed off, her gaze traveling over Mara with undisguised assessment. Someone who can cook, Mara finished for her. That's usually how it works. One of the browsing women snorted. The shopkeeper's mouth tightened. I'll get these things together. Take a few minutes. Mara nodded and moved to examine a shelf of canned goods. Behind her, the whispers started immediately. Not even whispers, really, just normal conversation at a volume clearly meant to be heard. Can't imagine what he was thinking. Probably couldn't find anyone else willing to go out there. That leg of hers must slow her down something awful. And her size. Imagine trying to move around a kitchen looking like that. Mara's hands tightened on her crutch. She'd heard worse. She'd heard much worse in towns meaner than this one, from people crueler than these bored ranch wives looking for something to discuss. The words were meant to cut, meant to reduce her, meant to remind her that she existed outside the boundaries of acceptable. She turned to face them. Her expression stayed calm. The kitchen's plenty big enough, she said conversationally, and the men don't seem to mind the food. The women's faces flushed. The shopkeeper busied herself with the supplies, suddenly very focused on her work. Mara held their gazes until they looked away, until the power dynamic shifted and they became the uncomfortable ones. When the supplies were loaded and paid for, Mara drove the wagon back to the ranch with her jaw tight and her mind already planning supper. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of mattering, wouldn't let their small cruelties take up residence in her chest. She'd done that before. It had nearly broken her. The ranch was quiet when she returned. The men were out working. She unloaded the first crate, her legs screaming in protest. "Let me help with that!" She spun. Caleb stood 3 feet away, having materialized from nowhere like he always did. "I can manage." "Didn't say you couldn't." He lifted the crate anyway, carried it to the kitchen. "But you've been managing all day. Let someone else manage for 5 minutes." "I'm paid to work, not to be coddled." "You're paid to cook. This is hauling." He returned for another crate. "There's a difference, Abishwan." They worked in silence, him carrying her, directing where things should go. It should have felt like failure, accepting his help. Instead, it felt like partnership. When the last crate was stored, Caleb paused at the door. "Town give you trouble. You get everything." Mara's head snapped up. Caleb stood in the doorway, his hat in his hands, dust coating his shirt. She hadn't heard him come in. "Yes, all accounted for." He crossed to the pump, worked the handle until water flowed, and filled a cup. He drank standing at the sink, his back to her. Mara thought the conversation was over. Then he spoke again. "Town give you trouble?" She considered lying, dismissed it. "Something I haven't handled before." He set the cup down with careful precision that seemed at odds with his size. "People talk. Doesn't mean they are right. People talk no matter what you do. Might as well give them something true to discuss." Caleb turned, then leaning against the counter, his arms crossed. "You made it to town and back, unloaded everything yourself. Still got supper to cook." It wasn't a question, but it felt like one anyway. "That's the job. Most people would have asked for help." "I'm not most people." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. "No," he said, "you're not." He left her, then disappearing into whatever part of the ranch demanded his attention. Mara sat in the quiet kitchen, her leg throbbing, her pride intact, and felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest. Not hope, exactly. She'd learned to be wary of hope. But maybe recognition. Maybe the beginning of understanding that silence wasn't always rejection. She pushed herself up, reached for her apron, and began to cook. That night, Caleb lingered after the other men left. He poured himself another cup of coffee and sat at the end of the table while she cleaned. "How long you been on your own?" he asked. The question surprised her. "Since my husband died, 8 months. Hard time. Hard enough." "The child." She was, "Yes, Lily's 6. Caleb was quiet for a moment. "She looks at you like you hung the moon." "Children are supposed to look at their mothers that way." "Not all do." There was something in his voice, old pain carefully buried. "Did you?" Mara asked. "Look at your mother that way." "Every day of her life. Past tense." Mara heard the weight of it. "She's gone. 2 years ago. Worked herself to death trying to earn respect from people who'd already decided she wasn't worth it." Mara stopped washing dishes, turned to face him fully. Because of how she looked. Caleb's jaw tightened. She was a big woman. People treated her like she was invisible, unless they were mocking her. She took in laundry, sewed, cooked, cleaned houses, did everything right, tried to be respectable. His hands curled into fists on the table. Town still treated her like she was nothing. When she died, barely anyone came to her funeral. Mara felt the familiar ache of recognition. Different circumstances, same cruelty. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry." His eyes met hers, pale gray and full of something raw. "Just don't let them do to you what they did to her. Don't break yourself trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for you." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Mara wanted to say something, wanted to tell him she understood, that she'd spent her whole life in spaces not meant for her, that she knew exactly what it cost. But before she could speak, hoofbeats sounded in the yard. Caleb stood immediately, his hand going to the gun at his hip, a reflex Mara realized, born from experience. "Stay here," he said. He went out. Mara moved to the window, Lily appearing at her side. A man sat on horseback in the yard, well-dressed, expensive hat, the kind of man who'd never worked with his hands in his life. Behind him, 2 others, hard-faced men with guns visible on their hips. Caleb stepped into the yard. His posture was casual, but Mara could see the tension in his shoulders. Hiram, what brings you here? So this was Patterson. Mara studied him, 50-something, portly, the bearing of someone used to getting his way. Heard you hired new help. Patterson's voice carried across the yard. Came to make my monthly offer. Still not selling. Caleb, be reasonable. This land isn't producing what it could. You're barely breaking even. I'm offering fair market value plus 20%. Already said no. Patterson's gaze moved past. Caleb found the window where Mara stood. His eyes narrowed. That's your new cook, the cripple from Omaha. Mara's blood went cold. Caleb's voice dropped, became dangerous. How I run my ranch isn't your concern. Everything in Red Creek is my concern. Patterson leaned forward in his saddle. That woman's got a reputation. Husband died in debt. Questionable moral character. You know nothing about her. I know enough. And I know the bank, the railroad, the stockyards. They all have standards. I'd hate for your business relationships to suffer because of poor judgment in personnel. The threat was clear. Caleb took a step forward. His hand still rested on his gun. You threatening me, Hiram? I'm offering friendly advice. Send her away. Find yourself someone suitable. I'll even help you find a proper woman, someone who can give you sons and manage a household without being a burden. Mara couldn't hear what Caleb said next. His voice dropped too low, but she saw Patterson's face darken, saw the two men behind him shift in their saddles. Then Patterson pulled his horse around. This is your last warning, Granger. Think carefully about your choices. They rode off, leaving dust hanging in the air. Caleb stood in the yard long after they'd gone. Finally, he turned back to the house. When he came inside, his face was granite. How much did you hear? Enough. I'm sorry. For what? You didn't say those things. No, but they were said on my property, about someone under my protection. The word protection made Mara's chest tight. I don't need protecting. Maybe not, but you've got it anyway. He crossed to the table, pulled out a chair and sat heavily. Patterson wants this land. Has for 5 years. The ranch sits on the best water in the territory. Without it, his cattle operation can't expand. So he's trying to pressure you. He's trying to find leverage, and he thinks you're it. Mara lowered herself into the chair across from him. Because I'm easy to dismiss. Because he's a fool who mistakes appearance for substance. The words coming from this silent man hit harder than comfort. What did you tell him? That his opinion doesn't run my ranch, and that if he comes back here making threats, he'll find out exactly how much I care about his standards. Outside, the sun had set. The kitchen was growing dark. Neither of them moved to light a lamp. Mr. Granger. Caleb. Caleb, I don't want to be the reason you lose your ranch. You're not the reason for anything. Patterson is. He'd find some excuse whether you were here or not. But I make it easier. You make biscuits. His mouth quirked, almost a smile. Everything else is his problem, not yours. Mara wanted to believe him, wanted to think that her presence wouldn't cost him everything. But she'd been a problem her whole life. She knew how the story went. Still, for tonight in this kitchen, she let herself pretend that maybe this time would be different. That maybe finally she'd found a place that would fight to keep her, even if she didn't quite believe it yet. The letter arrived on the 6th day. Mara was kneading dough when Cookie brought it in, his expression apologetic. The envelope was cream-colored expensive, her name written in careful script across the front. She wiped flour from her hands and opened it. The words blurred, then sharpened into focus. Mrs. Hale, we have been informed of your current employment in Wyoming Territory. Your late husband's outstanding debts remain unpaid. $340. Payment is expected within 90 days, or we will pursue legal action including garnishment of wages and potential custody review of minor child Lillian Hale. Respectfully, Hendricks and Associates creditors. The paper slipped from Mara's fingers. $340. She made $12 a month. Even if she spent nothing, ate nothing, saved every penny, it would take over 2 years to pay that debt. And they were threatening Lily. Her vision tunneled. The kitchen walls pressed in. Somewhere far away, she heard Lily laughing outside with one of the ranch dogs. They could take her daughter, could claim Mara was unfit, unable to provide, could put Lily in an orphanage, or bind her out to some family as unpaid labor. Ma'am? Cookie's voice cut through the roaring in her ears. You all right? Mara forced herself to breathe. Fine, just unexpected news. She retrieved the letter with shaking hands, folded it carefully, tucked it in her apron pocket where it burned like a brand against her hip. I need to start dinner, she said. Her voice came from somewhere outside her body. Cookie watched her with concern but didn't push. He left quietly, pulling the door closed behind him. Mara stood alone in her kitchen, surrounded by the smell of rising bread and her own failure. She'd thought they were safe here, thought distance would protect them, thought maybe finally she could stop running. But debt had long arms, and creditors had longer memories. She returned to kneading her hands, working the dough with mechanical precision. The rhythm usually calmed her. Today it just gave her mind space to calculate all the ways this could destroy them. If they garnished her wages, she wouldn't have enough left to save. Would be trapped here working for nothing, unable to leave, unable to pay off what she owed. If they pursued custody, she'd lose Lily. Would have to watch her daughter disappear into a system that ground children up and spit out broken adults. The dough tore under her hands. She'd over-kneaded it, worked it past elasticity into toughness. Ruined, like everything else she touched. She scraped it into the bowl anyway. Maybe the men wouldn't notice. Maybe they'd eat it without complaint like they ate everything else. Maybe she could survive this. The door opened. Caleb stepped inside his hat, leaving a line across his forehead where sweat had gathered. His eyes found her immediately sharp and assessing. Cookie said you got a letter. It's nothing. Didn't ask if it was nothing, asked what it said. Mara's hands stilled on the bowl. She could lie, should lie. This wasn't his problem, wasn't his burden to carry. But the weight of the secret was crushing her chest, and she was so tired of carrying everything alone. It's from my husband's creditors. They want payment within 90 days. How much? $340. Caleb's expression didn't change. That's not nothing. No, what happens if you don't pay? Mara's throat closed. She had to force the words out. They'll garnish my wages, and they're threatening to review Lily's custody, claim I'm unfit to provide for her. The silence that followed felt like falling. Then Caleb moved, crossed to where she stood and pulled out a chair. Sit. I have dinner to make. It can wait. Sit. Mara sat, her leg throbbed with relief. Caleb took the chair across from her, leaned forward, his scarred hands flat on the table. I'll pay it. The words didn't make sense. What? I'll pay your debt. $340. You can't just, it's not a gift. It's a loan. You work it off at $2 a week deducted from wages. That fair? Mara's mind tried to do the math and failed. Too many numbers, too much relief flooding her system. That's years. 3 years, give or take. You planning on leaving before then? No, but? Then it's settled. Why? The question burst out of her. Why would you do this? Caleb's jaw tightened. Because Patterson wants you gone. That's reason enough to keep you here. That's the only reason. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his winter gray eyes. Something that made her breath catch. You make good biscuits, he said finally. It wasn't an answer, but maybe it was enough of one. Mara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just keep cooking. He stood, settling his hat back on his head. At the door he paused. Mara, they're not taking your daughter. I give you my word on that. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with the ruins of her over-kneaded dough and the impossible gift of his promise. She didn't know that in Red Creek, Patterson was already making his next move, that the shopkeeper had received instructions that very morning, that economic warfare was about to become something more personal. All she knew was that for the first time since Marcus died, someone had chosen to help her without expecting payment in forms she couldn't give. It felt like hope. It felt dangerous. The next supply run happened 4 days later. Mara drove the wagon alone this time, Lily staying back to help cookie shell beans. The child had attached herself to the injured cowboy, following him around like a devoted shadow. It made Mara's chest ache with something that might have been gratitude or might have been fear. Lily was getting comfortable here, starting to believe this place was home. What would happen when it all fell apart? Because it would fall apart. It always did. Mara pushed the thought away and focused on driving. The horses knew the route needed little guidance. She let her mind wander to the menu for the coming week. They were low on flour, needed more coffee, could use fresh vegetables if the store had any. Red Creek appeared on the horizon, shimmering in afternoon heat. The general store was quiet when she entered. The shopkeeper looked up from her ledger and something flickered across her face. Not quite guilt, not quite satisfaction. "Mrs. Hale, what can I do for you?" "I have a list." Mara laid it on the counter. The woman picked it up, scanned it, set it down. "I'm sorry, these items aren't available." Mara's stomach clenched. "Which items?" "All of them." "That's not possible. You had flour last week." "Had a run on supplies. Everything spoken for." Mara looked past her at the shelves, saw flour stacked 3 bags deep, saw coffee tins lined up like soldiers. Those bags right there. The flour. Who were they spoken for? The shopkeeper's mouth thinned. "Other customers. Cash-paying customers." "I'm paying cash." "Your credit's no good here." "I'm not asking for credit. I have money." Nevertheless, the woman's eyes were flat. "I can't sell to you." Understanding crashed over Mara like cold water. This wasn't about supplies. This was about Patterson. He got to you. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Patterson told you not to sell to the Granger Ranch." Mr. Patterson is a respected businessman who provides guidance to local merchants about risk management. The careful phrasing confirmed everything. Mara's hands tightened on her crutch. "I need those supplies. I have men to feed." "Then I suggest you find another source." "The nearest other source is Cheyenne. That's 2 days' ride." The shopkeeper shrugged. "Not my concern." Rage built in Mara's chest, hot and clean and useless. She wanted to sweep everything off the counter, wanted to grab the flour herself and leave money on the counter and dare this woman to stop her. Instead, she straightened her spine, met the shopkeeper's eyes with ice in her own. When Patterson's empire collapses, and it will, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember choosing cruelty over decency, and you'll have to live with that. She turned and walked out, her crutch tapping a furious rhythm on the wooden floor. Outside, the sun was too bright, the air too hot. Everything felt sharp-edged and hostile. A figure appeared beside her wagon. Tommy, the young cowboy. His face was flushed with anger. "I heard. Followed you into town. Thought something like this might happen." "You were right. Mr. Granger's not going to like this. Mr. Granger is going to ride to Cheyenne, 2 days away from his ranch because Patterson's playing games." Tommy's jaw set. "No, ma'am, I'll ride to Cheyenne. You need supplies today. I can be back tomorrow night if I push hard." "Tommy, that's asking too much. You saved Cookie's arm when that fence post fell on it. Stitched him up before infection could set. You think we don't remember?" Mara blinked. "I just cleaned the wound. You did more than that. You knew what you were doing, same as you knew what you were doing with Red's shoulder." His young face was fierce. "You take care of us. We take care of you. That's how family works." The word family hit like a fist. Before Mara could respond, 3 women emerged from the church across the street. She recognized one of them. Constance Thornton, the Reverend's wife. They crossed directly toward her. Mara's stomach sank. She didn't have energy for this. Not today. "Mrs. Hale," Constance's voice dripped false sweetness. "How lovely to see you." "Mrs. Thornton, I wanted to invite you to our Ladies' Aid Society meeting tomorrow. We gather every Thursday to do charitable work." The offer was so unexpected Mara almost laughed. "That's kind, but I work during the day." "Surely Mr. Granger could spare you for one afternoon. It would be good for you to have female companionship, to be among proper women." There it was, the blade hidden in the courtesy. "I have all the companionship I need." Constance's smile sharpened. "Do you living out there with 15 men, no female influence? Your daughter seeing, well, things a child shouldn't see." "My daughter sees men working hard and treating each other with respect." "Does she see you alone with Mr. Granger behind closed doors?" The implication was clear. Mara felt her face heat. "I'm the cook. Of course I'm alone in the kitchen. That's where cooking happens. Is that all that happens? One of the other women spoke up. We've heard stories about the nights, about improper arrangements. Tommy stepped forward. That's enough. Young man, this doesn't concern you. It concerns me when you're calling my friend a liar and a whore. Gasps from the church ladies. Constance drew herself up. How dare you use such language? How dare you suggest it? Tommy's voice shook with fury. Mrs. Hale works harder than any of you. She feeds us, cares for us when we're hurt, doesn't complain when we track mud through her clean kitchen. And you repay her by spreading lies. We're not spreading lies, we're expressing Christian concern. Then concern yourself with your own souls and leave hers alone. The women retreated scandalized. Constance threw a final glare at Mara. You'll regret this, all of it, mark my words. They swept away, skirts rustling with indignation. Tommy turned to Mara. Sorry, ma'am. Shouldn't have said that word in front of you. You defended my honor. I think I can forgive the vocabulary. They had no right. They had every right. This is their town. I'm the outsider. Then their town's got a sickness. Mara touched his arm. Thank you for standing up for me. Someone had to. They rode back to the ranch in heavy silence. Mara's mind churned through the implications. Patterson had locked down her supply line. The church ladies were spreading rumors about impropriety. The social noose was tightening, and she'd been here less than 2 weeks. When they arrived, Caleb was waiting in the yard. One look at the empty wagon and his expression went granite. What happened? Mara explained. The shopkeeper's refusal, Patterson's influence, Constance Thornton's accusations. With each word, Caleb's jaw grew tighter. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to Tommy. Saddle my horse. And yours. Yes, sir. Where are you going? Mara asked. Cheyenne, to find a supplier who doesn't answer to Patterson. That's 2 days. You can't just leave the ranch. Cookie can manage. He's done it before. Caleb, this isn't your fight. He looked at her, really looked at her. You're my cook. You need supplies to do your job. That makes it my fight. Patterson's doing this because of me. Patterson's doing this because he's a small man trying to feel big. You're just his excuse. Caleb's voice dropped. If it wasn't you, it'd be something else. The water rights, the land, my refusal to sell. He'd find a reason. But I make it easier for him. You make biscuits. Everything else is his problem. The echo of his earlier words made something warm uncurl in Mara's chest. Tommy appeared with both horses saddled. Caleb swung up easy and practiced. We'll be back tomorrow night, day after at latest. You hold down the fort. It was the same question he'd asked before, but this time it felt different, like trust instead of duty. I'll hold it, Mara said. He nodded once, then he and Tommy rode out, dust rising behind them. Mara stood in the yard watching them disappear. Around her, the ranch hummed with afternoon activity. Cattle lowing in distant pastures. The rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil from the smithy. Chickens scratching in the dirt. This place that had been foreign 2 weeks ago was starting to feel like something more. Like home. And Patterson was trying to take it away before she'd even had time to believe it was real. The men noticed immediately that something was wrong. At supper, she served beans and cornbread made from the last of the supplies. Simple food filling, but uninspired. Red looked at his plate, then at her. Everything all right, ma'am? Fine, just stretching supplies until Mr. Granger gets back from Cheyenne. Cheyenne? Cookie's head snapped up. What's he doing there? Mara explained. The store refusing to sell, Patterson's economic pressure. The men's faces darkened. That son of a... Red caught himself. Sorry, ma'am, but Patterson's got no right. He's got all the right. It's his town. It's our territory. Another cowboy spoke up. Mara thought his name was Jack. We were here before Patterson arrived with his railroad money and his fancy suits. This land doesn't belong to him. Try telling him that. Cookie pushed his plate away. We could go talk to him. Make him understand that messing with our cook is messing with us. No, Mara's voice came out sharper than intended. No violence, that's exactly what he wants. An excuse to bring in the law claim Granger Ranch is dangerous. So we just let him starve us out. We adapt. I can make do with less. can stretch ingredients further. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't sustainable. She could only work miracles for so long. That night, alone in her small room, Mara pulled out her mother's recipe book. The pages were worn, stained with decades of use. Her mother had brought it from Germany, had added to it over the years, had taught Mara to cook from these exact instructions. She traced the faded handwriting. Sauerteigbrot, Kartoffelsuppe, Apfelkuchen. Her mother had believed that feeding people was sacred work, that the breaking of bread created family where blood couldn't. "I'm trying, Mama," Mara whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying to make this work." Outside, wolves howled in the distance. The sound made her shiver despite the summer heat. She didn't sleep well, kept jerking awake, convinced she heard hoofbeats, convinced creditors had found her, convinced someone was coming to take Lily away. By dawn, she was exhausted and wired in equal measure. She built the fire, started coffee, began working with what little she had. The men needed feeding. Everything else could wait. Red came in first, as he often did. The big cowboy had taken to arriving early, helping her carry water from the pump, splitting kindling for the stove. This morning he brought something else, a burlap sack. "What's that?" Mara asked. "Went hunting last night. Got 2 rabbits and a sage hen. Thought you could use them." "Fresh meat." Mara's throat tightened. "Red, you didn't have to." "Didn't do it for you, did it for my stomach." But his gruff voice was gentle. "Can't expect a woman to make something from nothing." He left the sack and departed quickly, as if embarrassed by his own kindness. Mara cleaned the game and started a stew, added wild onions one of the other men had dug up, used the last of the flour for dumplings that would stretch the meat to feed everyone. It was something, it would do, but it wasn't sustainable, and they all knew it. The day crawled past. Mara kept herself busy, but her mind was in Cheyenne with Caleb, wondering if he'd found a supplier, wondering if Patterson's reach extended even there, wondering why she cared so much about a man she barely knew. Evening came. The men filed in for supper. They ate her rabbit stew without complaint, but she could feel their tension, their awareness that things were unraveling. After they left, Cookie stayed behind. "Ma'am, I need to tell you something." Mara's stomach dropped. "What?" "My cousin works at the bank in town. He sent word. Patterson's been asking questions. About you specifically. Your history, your husband's debts, your circumstances." "What kind of circumstance?" Cookie looked uncomfortable. "Your leg, your situation. He's trying to build a case that you're unfit, that having you here makes the ranch look bad." "To who?" "To potential investors. Patterson's been telling folks that Granger Ranch is failing, that Caleb's judgment is compromised, that hiring someone like you proves he's desperate." Someone like you. The word shouldn't hurt anymore. Mara had heard variations her whole life. They still hurt. "Is it working?" she asked quietly. "Some folks are listening. The bank's getting nervous about extending Caleb's credit line. The stockyard's suggesting he might want to ship his cattle through a different operation. Because of me. Because of Patterson using you as ammunition." The distinction didn't make her feel better. Cookie continued. "There's talk of bringing it up at the church social next Sunday, making it a community issue. Asking the territorial judge to review the ranch's employment practices. They can do that. Patterson knows the judge. They served together in the war." "Of course they must." Mara sank into a chair. "I should leave, before this destroys everything Caleb's built." "No, ma'am." Cookie's voice was firm. "That's what Patterson wants. You leave, he wins. Proves he can pressure Caleb into anything. Next it'll be water rights, then land, then the whole ranch. But if I stay, if you stay, you show Patterson that we don't bend to bullies, that this ranch stands by its people. I'm not your people. I've been here 2 weeks. You stitched Red's shoulder, cleaned at my arm wound before it could fester. You teach Lily her letters every night after supper. You make coffee strong enough to wake the dead and biscuits light enough to float." Cookie's weathered face softened. "You're our people, ma'am, whether you know it yet or not." The words lodged in Mara's chest like stones, heavy and permanent. What if it's not enough? What if Patterson finds a way to... Then we deal with it, together. After Cookie left, Mara sat alone in the darkening kitchen. Through the window, she could see stars beginning to appear. Wyoming stars, bigger and brighter than any she'd seen in Pennsylvania or Nebraska. This place was changing her, making her believe in things she'd given up on, making her hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing of all. Caleb and Tommy returned the next night just as full dark settled over the ranch. Mara heard the wagon before she saw it, the rattle of supplies in the bed unmistakable. She stepped onto the porch. Lily appeared at her side, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Is that Mr. Granger?" "Yes, baby." He came back. The simple statement held wonder, as if Lily couldn't quite believe adults kept their promises. The wagon rolled into the yard. Caleb climbed down, his movements stiff from hours in the saddle. He saw Mara on the porch, and something in his face eased. "You held the fort," he said. "I held it." Tommy started unloading supplies. Mara moved to help, but Caleb caught her arm. "Leave it. We'll handle it in the morning." "I should at least inventory." "Morning." His voice was firm but not unkind. "You've been working all day. Rest." But he didn't rest. He and Tommy unloaded everything, stacking crates in the kitchen while Mara protested and Lily watched with wide eyes. When they finished, Caleb dismissed Tommy and turned to Mara. "Found a supplier in Cheyenne. He'll deliver direct to the ranch twice a month. No need to go through Red Creek." "That must have cost extra." "Worth it." "Caleb." "Not finished." He pulled an envelope from his coat. "This is the payment to your creditors. $340. I wired it this afternoon. They'll have it by week's end." Mara stared at the receipt. "You already paid." "Told you I would. But I haven't signed anything. We haven't agreed on terms." "Terms are simple. You cook, you stay, you pay me back at $2 a week." His gray eyes held hers. "Unless you're planning to run." "No, I don't understand why you trust me. You stay up past midnight making sure there's fresh bread for breakfast. You teach ranch hands to read during their breaks. You sewed buttons on Red's shirt because he's too proud to admit he doesn't know how." Caleb's voice dropped. "You think I don't notice those things? That's just what people do." "No, that's what family does." There was that word again. Family. Mara's eyes burned. "Mr. Granger." "Caleb." "Caleb, you barely know me." "I know enough." "You don't." The words burst out before she could stop them. "You don't know about Marcus, about the gambling debts, about the creditors who came to our house while he was dying and demanded payment, about the doctor who refused to treat him unless I—" She stopped. Couldn't say the rest. "Unless you—" What? Mara looked at Lily, who'd fallen asleep in the chair by the cold stove. Looked at this child who'd seen too much, survived too much. "Unless I paid in ways other than money," she said quietly. Caleb's expression didn't change. "Did you know I let Marcus die instead?" The confession hung between them, ugly and true. "He would have died anyway," Caleb said. "Typhoid doesn't care about bribes." "Maybe, but I'll never know if those extra hours, that extra care might have saved him. You protected yourself and your daughter. That's not wrong. The church said it was, said a good wife would have done anything to save her husband. The church is full of men who've never had to make that choice." Mara laughed. It came out broken. "You're the first person who's ever said that." "Then everyone else is a fool." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell leather and sage and the dust of 2 days hard riding. "Mara, whatever happened in Omaha, whatever choices you made, they brought you here, and I'm grateful for that. Even if Patterson destroys your ranch because of me, he won't. You can't know that. I know I'm not letting you go without a fight, and I'm a man who knows how to fight." The certainty in his voice made something crack open in Mara's chest. She'd been braced for rejection her whole life, had armor built from years of disappointment. This man was dismantling it piece by piece with quiet declarations and kept promises. It terrified her. "I need to tell you something," Caleb said. "Something I should have mentioned before you took this job." Mara's stomach clenched. Here it comes. The revelation that would change everything. "I have a son." Of all the things she'd expected, this wasn't one of them. "What?" "His name is Samuel, Sam. He's 8 years old, lives in town with my late wife's mother." "You have a child and you didn't—" "I couldn't." Caleb's voice went rough. "Sarah died giving birth to him. bled out in our bedroom while I held her hand and begged her to stay. She made me promise to take care of him, to love him, and he stopped, swallowed hard. I looked at him, and all I could see was her dying. And then I saw how the town looked at me, the same way that man at the Omaha station looked at you. His voice cracked, like I was something broken, something that had destroyed a good woman by existing. They whispered when I walked past with him, "That's the man who killed Sarah Granger. Couldn't even keep his wife alive." Mara's breath caught. She knew that look, knew those whispers. I couldn't protect him from that, Caleb continued. Couldn't protect myself, so I gave him away. Gave him to Ruth because I thought anywhere was better than being raised by a man the town called a murderer. Every time he smiled, I saw her face going pale. I wasn't strong enough. Mara's throat ached. "So you sent him away?" Ruth, Sarah's mother, offered to take him, said she'd raise him properly, that he'd be better off with her. And I let her because I was a coward who couldn't face what I'd lost. You weren't a coward. You were grieving. I was selfish. I chose my pain over my son's needs. Caleb's hands curled into fists. He's 8 years old and he barely knows me. Calls me sir when I visit. Flinches when I reach for him. He's scared. He should be. I abandoned him. No. Mara moved closer. You made an impossible choice in an impossible situation. That doesn't make you a monster. Ruth thinks it does. She's been petitioning the territorial court for full custody. Says I'm unfit, that he's better off without me. Everything clicked into place. Patterson's interest in Mara's fitness, the church's sudden concern about morality on the ranch, the social pressure. Ruth's working with Patterson. Caleb nodded. She wants ammunition to prove I can't provide a proper home. Hiring you someone with your circumstances gave her exactly what she needed. So this is about custody, not the ranch. It's about both. Patterson wants the land. Ruth wants Sam. They're using each other to get what they want. And I'm the weapon they're using against you. You're not a weapon. You're a scapegoat. Mara sank into a chair. Her leg throbbed. Her head ached. Everything felt too heavy. I should leave. Make this easier for you. If you leave, I lose twice. Lose you and lose the case Ruth is building. She'll say I couldn't even keep a cook, that I'm unstable. If I stay, she uses me as proof you're morally compromised. So we're damned either way. Mara looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd lost his wife, abandoned his son, built walls around his heart so thick nothing could penetrate. This man who'd ridden 2 days to buy her supplies, who'd paid her debts without asking for collateral, who defended her to powerful men and gave her a place to belong. There's a third option, she said quietly. What's that? You bring Sam here. Let him see what kind of home this is. Let him choose. Caleb's face went blank with shock. He's 8. He can't make that choice. He's 8 and he's been living without his father for years. I think he's earned the right to decide where he belongs. What if he chooses Ruth? Then you fight in court, but at least you'll know you tried. And if he chooses me, Ruth will make your life hell. We'll use you as evidence that this is an unfit environment. Let her try, Mara's voice hardened. I've survived worse than a grieving grandmother's disapproval. Caleb stared at her. You'd do that, risk everything for a child who isn't yours. I'd do it for you, because you did it for me. The silence that followed felt like something breaking open, like walls crumbling, like two people who'd been alone too long, finally admitting they didn't have to be. I'm terrified, Caleb said softly, that if I let myself love you, I'll lose you the way I lost her. And I don't think I can survive that twice. The confession hung in the air, raw and honest and devastating. Mara reached across the table, took his scarred hand in her flour-dusted one. I'm terrified too, she said. Terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you settled, that you married damaged goods because no one else would have you. You think you're damaged? Everyone else does. Everyone else is wrong. His fingers tightened on hers. You're the strongest person I've ever known, Mara Hale. You just don't see it yet. And you're not the kosher you think you are. You just haven't forgiven yourself. They sat in the quiet kitchen, hands linked across the table, two broken people trying to believe they could be whole. Outside, the stars wheeled overhead. Cattle settled in for the night. The ranch breathed around them alive and constant. And somewhere in Red Creek, a woman named Ruth Whitmore was sharpening her legal knives, preparing to tear apart everything they were trying to build. But for this moment in this kitchen, Mara let herself believe that maybe they were strong enough to weather the storm, that maybe finally she'd found someone worth fighting for, even if the fight might destroy them both. 3 days later, Sam arrived. Mara heard the wagon first, then saw Caleb climbing down with a small figure beside him. The boy was thin, with his father's gray eyes and dark hair that needed cutting. He clutched a small bag and looked at the ranch like it might eat him. Lily appeared at Mara's side. "Mama, who's that?" "That's Mr. Granger's son. His name is Sam." "He's scared." "Yes, be gentle with him." Caleb brought Sam to the kitchen. The boy's eyes darted everywhere, taking in the space that supplies Mara herself. She saw him register her crutch, saw the question form and die on his lips. "Sam," Caleb said. His voice was careful, like he was gentling a spooked horse. "This is Mrs. Hale. She's the cook here. And this is her daughter, Lily." "Ma'am," Sam's voice was barely audible. "Hello, Sam. Are you hungry?" A small nod. "I'm making bread. Would you like to help?" The boy looked at his father. Caleb nodded encouragement. I, I don't know how." "That's all right, I'll teach you." Mara set him up at the work table beside Lily, showed both children how to knead dough, how to feel when it was ready, how to shape it into loaves. Sam was tentative at first. His hands barely touched the dough, but slowly he began to relax. His movements became surer, more confident. "Like this?" he asked. "Perfect. You're a natural." A small smile flickered across his face, the first she'd seen. Caleb watched from the doorway. His expression was complicated, hope and pain and longing all tangled together. After the bread was in the oven, Sam asked quietly, "Mrs. Hale, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why do you use that?" He nodded at her crutch. "Sam," Caleb's voice was sharp. "It's all right." Mara met the boy's eyes. "My leg doesn't work the same as other people's. It was born different, and then I hurt it when I was young. The crutch helps me walk." "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes, but I manage." "My grandma says people who are different are being punished by God for sins." Mara's blood went cold. She glanced at Caleb, saw fury flash across his face. "Your grandma is wrong," Mara said gently. "God doesn't punish people by making their bodies different. Bodies just come in all kinds. Some walk easy, some need help. But we're all valuable exactly as we are." Sam thought about this. "My mama died when I was born. Grandma says that's because my father sinned, that God took her as punishment." "Sam." Caleb's voice broke on the name. The boy looked up. "Is that true? Did you sin? Did I kill Mama?" Caleb crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, dropped to his knees in front of his son. His hands shook as he gripped the boy's shoulders. "No, you didn't kill your mother. She died because sometimes bodies don't work right during childbirth, because doctors don't always know how to help, because terrible things happen and it's no one's fault." His voice was rough. "Your mama loved you. She wanted you. Her last words were asking me to take care of you. And I failed her. I failed you. But not because of sin, because I was scared and hurting and didn't know how to be a father without her." Sam's eyes filled with tears. "Grandma says you don't want me, that you sent me away because you were ashamed of me." "I'm ashamed of myself, never of you." Caleb pulled the boy into his arms. "I'm so sorry, Sam. I'm so sorry I made you feel unwanted. You're my son. You're everything." The boy clung to his father and sobbed, years of pain spilling out in the safety of a kitchen that smelled like rising bread. Mara turned away to give them privacy, found Lily pressed against her side, tears streaming down the child's face. "Mama, is that how you felt when Papa died, like it was your fault?" Mara knelt, ignoring her screaming leg. "Sometimes, yes. But it wasn't. You didn't make him sick. I know that now, but knowing and feeling are different things." Lily threw her arms around Mara's neck. "I love you, Mama, no matter what people say. No matter what. I love you too, sweet girl. Behind them, Caleb was still holding Sam, rocking him gently, whispering apologies into his dark hair. The bread timer chimed. Mara pulled the loaves from the oven, golden and perfect. The smell filled the kitchen, covered the sounds of crying, made the space feel like home. Sam pulled away from his father, wiping his eyes. Can I stay for a while? As long as you want, Caleb said. Will Mrs. Hale teach me more about bread? If she's willing. I'm willing, Mara said. The four of them ate fresh bread with butter while it was still warm. Sam sat between his father and Lily, slowly relaxing, asking questions about the ranch, about the cattle, about what cowboys did. It felt like a beginning. It felt fragile. That night after the children were asleep, Caleb found Mara on the back porch. She was sitting on the steps, her legs stretched out, looking at the stars. He sat beside her. Their shoulders touched. Thank you, he said. For what? For knowing what he needed, what I needed. You would have figured it out. Maybe, or maybe I would have frozen like I always do. He turned to look at her. You make me braver, Mara. You were already brave. You just forgot. His hand found hers in the darkness, held tight. They sat in comfortable silence. Around them, the ranch settled. In the distance, cattle lowed. Closer, one of the night horses whinnied. Then another sound. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses moving fast. Caleb was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the gun at his hip. Get inside, lock the door. What's happening? Don't know, but whoever's coming at this hour isn't bringing good news. Mara hurried inside, her heart racing. Through the window, she saw riders emerge from the darkness. 5 of them, their faces covered with bandanas. They circled the yard. One of them threw something at the barn. Glass shattered. Flames erupted. Fire. The barn was burning. Cowboys poured from the bunkhouse shouting. Caleb was already running, organizing them, directing water buckets. The riders circled once more, laughing. Then one of them rode close to the house, close enough that Mara could see his eyes above the bandana. They were familiar. She'd seen them in town. Patterson's men. The rider threw something through the kitchen window. Glass exploded inward. A rock wrapped in paper skidded across the floor. Mara grabbed it, unfolded the note. Leave. Last warning. Next time we take more than property. Her blood turned to ice. She looked toward the small room where both children slept. They were threatening Lily, threatening Sam. Outside, the men were getting the fire under control. The barn would survive, though one wall was charred. But the message was clear. Patterson was done with economic warfare, done with social pressure. He was moving to physical intimidation, and he wouldn't stop until he got what he wanted. Mara stood in her damaged kitchen, holding the threatening note, and felt fury replace fear. She'd run before. From Omaha, from creditors, from the wreckage of her life. She wasn't running anymore. If Patterson wanted a fight, she'd give him one. But first, she needed to make sure the children were safe. Because mothers who'd lost everything had nothing left to lose. And that made them dangerous. The next 2 weeks passed in uneasy tension. The men took turns keeping watch at night. Caleb installed better locks on all the doors. Sam stayed at the ranch. Ruth's furious letters arriving daily demanding his return. Mara kept cooking, kept teaching the children, kept pretending everything was normal. But everyone could feel the storm building. It broke on a Tuesday afternoon. Mara was in the kitchen with both children, teaching them to make pie crust when she heard the wagon. Too early for supplies, too fast for a casual visit. She moved to the window and felt her stomach drop. Ruth Whitmore had arrived, with the sheriff and Reverend Thornton, and behind them in a separate carriage, Hiram Patterson himself. Children, Mara said quietly, go to your room, lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Mama, what's wrong? Lily's voice was small. Just do as I say, now. They ran. She heard the door lock click. Mara straightened her spine, gripped her crutch, and stepped onto the porch just as Caleb emerged from the barn. Ruth climbed down from the wagon, her face tight with righteous fury. Where is my grandson? He's safe, Caleb said. Safe in this den of iniquity with that woman. Mrs. Hale has a name. Use it. I'll use whatever term I please. Sheriff, I demand you retrieve my grandson immediately. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Whitmore, I can't just take a child without proper authority. I have a court order. She produced a document. Judge Whitmore has granted me temporary custody pending a full hearing. Samuel is to be returned to my care immediately. Mara's heart sank. Judge Whitmore, Ruth's late husband's brother. The fix was in. Caleb took the document. Read it. His face went carefully blank. This says temporary. There hasn't been a hearing yet. The hearing is scheduled for Friday. Until then, Sam comes with me. No, then. Mr. Granger, I strongly advise you to comply, the sheriff said. Violating a court order is a crime, I know. Caleb's voice was ice. So is kidnapping. So is arson. So is intimidation. He looked past Ruth to where Patterson sat in his carriage, watching the scene with barely concealed satisfaction. We both know who's behind this. Who hired men to burn my barn? Who threatened my household? Who's been pressuring merchants and spreading lies? Patterson climbed down. Careful with your accusations, Granger. Slander is also a crime. Is it slander if it's true? Do you have proof? I have a witness. Caleb looked at Mara. Mrs. Hale saw the men, recognized them from town. A woman with questionable credibility. A cripple who's been filling your head with nonsense. Patterson's voice dripped contempt. No court would believe her testimony. Mara stepped forward. My leg doesn't affect my eyes, Mr. Patterson, or my memory. I saw your men. I can describe them, and I will. In court, your word against theirs. Patterson smiled. And my men have alibis. They were with me that evening. Witnesses can confirm it. Bought witnesses. Credible witnesses. Unlike yourself. Ruth cut in. This is irrelevant. The court order stands. Sheriff, do your duty. The sheriff sighed. Mr. Granger, I need you to produce the boy. And if I refuse, then I arrest you for contempt, and the child is removed anyway. Caleb's hands curled into fists. For a moment, Mara thought he might fight, might make this into something violent and irreversible. Then his shoulders sagged. Sam, he called, come out here, son. The door opened. Sam emerged, Lily clutching his hand. Both children's faces were pale with fear. Ruth's expression softened when she saw her grandson. Samuel, darling, come to Grandma. We're going home. Sam didn't move. I am home. This isn't your home. This place is unsuitable. You belong with me. I belong with my father. Your father abandoned you. I raised you. I love you. If you love me, you wouldn't make me leave. Sam's voice shook but held firm. I want to stay here, with Papa, with Mrs. Hale and Lily. Ruth's face hardened. You're 8 years old. You don't know what you want. I know I want my father. Sheriff, remove him. The sheriff moved towards Sam. Caleb stepped between them. Don't. His hand rested on his gun. Don't touch my son. Mr. Granger, don't make this worse. How could it be worse? You're taking my child on a false court order issued by a judge with a personal interest in the case. That's for the appeals court to decide. Right now, I have to enforce what's in front of me. Stand off, everyone frozen. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Then Mara spoke. I'll go with him. All eyes turned to her. What? Caleb's voice was sharp. If the court order says Sam needs proper female supervision, I'll provide it. I'll go to town, stay at the boarding house. Make sure he's cared for until the hearing. Ruth's eyes narrowed. You think I'd allow that woman near my grandson? The court order doesn't specify who provides supervision, just that proper arrangements must be made. Mara looked at the sheriff. Am I wrong? He scanned the document. It's vague on that point. Then I'm coming, as Sam's temporary guardian. Unless you'd rather explain to the judge why you separated a child from someone he trusts and feels safe with. Mrs. Hale, you can't, Caleb started. Yes, I can, and I will. She met his eyes. He needs someone on his side, someone who will fight for him. I'll fight for him. You'll be fighting legal battles. He needs someone for the day-to-day, someone who'll make sure he eats, sleeps, doesn't forget he's loved. Understanding dawned in Caleb's eyes, followed quickly by fear. If you go to town, you'll be in Patterson's territory, under his thumb. I'll manage. Mara, trust me. She said it quietly just for him. I know what I'm doing. She didn't, but she couldn't let Sam be torn away from his father. Couldn't let Ruth win by default. Couldn't let Patterson destroy this family she was beginning to believe could be hers. Ruth sputtered. This is absurd. Sheriff, she has no legal standing. Neither do you until the hearing, Mara pointed out. We're both operating on temporary authority, unless you'd like to challenge that in court. The sheriff looked between them, made a decision. Mrs. Hale can accompany the boy to town. Mrs. Whitmore, you'll need to arrange suitable lodging for them both. I will not, or I can arrange it myself, at the jail, your choice. Ruth's mouth snapped shut. She looked at Patterson, who was watching the scene with calculating eyes. Finally, she nodded. Fine, but she stays in a boarding house, under supervision, and the boy comes to my home for meals. The boy stays with me. You can visit during the day. Supervised. Mara's voice was steel. Another standoff, another moment of dangerous balance. Ruth broke first. Friday, we'll settle this Friday. Friday, Mara agreed. She turned to Caleb, saw the war in his eyes, the desire to fight warring with the knowledge that fighting would only make things worse. I'll bring him back, she promised, no matter what. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not. She gathered Lily and Sam, packed a small bag, moved through the motions with mechanical precision while her heart screamed. At the wagon, Caleb caught her arm. If Patterson tries anything, I'll handle it. You don't know what he's capable of. Neither does he know what I'm capable of. She met his eyes. I'm not the same woman who arrived here 3 weeks ago, Caleb. This place changed me. You changed me. Mara, He stopped, started again. I can't lose you, either of you. You won't. How can you know? Because I'm done running. Done letting bullies win. Done accepting that people like me don't get to have families and homes and futures. Her voice dropped. I love you, Caleb Granger. And I love that boy, and I will burn this entire territory down before I let Patterson take either of you from me. She said it, the thing they'd been dancing around for weeks, the truth that terrified her. And instead of the rejection she'd expected, Caleb pulled her close and kissed her, hard and desperate and full of everything he couldn't say. When they broke apart, they were both shaking. Come back to me, he said, always. She climbed into the wagon, Lily on one side, Sam on the other. Ruth drove her spine rigid with disapproval. As they pulled away, Mara looked back, saw Caleb standing in the yard, his face etched with fear and fury and love, saw the ranch that had become home disappearing behind them, and wondered if she just made the biggest mistake of her life, or the bravest decision. In town, Patterson watched them arrive with a smile that made Mara's skin crawl. The war had just entered its final phase, and she had 3 days to figure out how to win a battle where all the weapons were stacked against her. But she had one advantage Patterson didn't know about. She had nothing left to lose, and desperate women were the most dangerous opponents of all. The Red Creek boarding house smelled like boiled cabbage and disappointment. Mara lay awake on the narrow bed, Lily curled against one side, Sam against the other. Both children had finally fallen asleep after hours of whispered fears and reassurances. Through the thin walls, she could hear the town settling for the night. Saloon piano, drunken laughter. The constant reminder that she was in enemy territory, now surrounded by people who wanted her gone. She'd been here 2 days. 2 days of Ruth's supervised visits where the woman picked apart every interaction. 2 days of townspeople staring. 2 days of Patterson's shadow falling across everything. Tomorrow was Friday, the hearing. Mara ran through her arguments again. Sam wanted to stay with his father. Caleb had demonstrated willingness to change. The ranch was a proper environment. She could testify to all of it. But against a judge who was Ruth's brother-in-law, with Patterson's influence backing the case, what chance did Truth have? She must have finally dozed because she woke to banging on the door. Gray dawn light filtered through the window. The children stirred. Mrs. Hale, Cookie's voice. Ma'am, you need to come quick. Mara grabbed her wrapper and crutch, opened the door to find Cookie, his face pale. What happened? It's the ranch. Patterson's men hit it again last night. Burned the new barn section, ran off half the cattle, beat Red unconscious. His voice shook. Caleb's arrested. The floor tilted. What? Sheriff says he attacked Patterson's men, says he started the fight. Patterson's pressing charges. That's insane. Caleb was defending his property. Patterson has witnesses saying otherwise. Judge issued a warrant this morning. Cookie's weathered face was desperate. They're holding him at the jail. Hearing's been moved up. Starts in 2 hours. Mara's mind raced. This was Patterson's final move. Arrest Caleb on false charges, paint him as violent and unstable, use it to strip his custody rights and force a land sale. Elegant, ruthless. And it was working. Where's Red? Doc's with him. He'll live, but he's in bad shape. And the other men, spooked, half think we should just give Patterson what he wants before someone gets killed. Sam appeared behind Mara, his face white. Is Papa in jail? She wanted to lie, to protect him, but he'd had enough lies in his short life. Yes, but we're going to fix this. How? Good question. Mara looked at Cookie. Tell the men to come to town, all of them. I need witnesses. Ma'am, they're scared. Tell them the truth scares Patterson more than violence does. And I've got truth on my side. Cookie nodded and left. Mara turned to find both children watching her with 2 old eyes. Get dressed, she said. Both of you, we're going to court. The territorial courthouse was the finest building in Red Creek. Stone foundation, glass windows, a bell tower that proclaimed civilization had arrived in Wyoming. Inside, it was packed. Seemed the whole town had come to watch the Granger family's destruction. Mara entered with her head high and her children on either side. Conversations died. Stares followed her progress down the aisle. She found seats near the front. Caleb was already there, flanked by deputies. His eye was swollen, his knuckles split. He'd fought then. Of course he had. His eyes found hers across the room. In them she saw fury and fear, and something that looked like goodbye. She shook her head minutely. Not goodbye, not yet. Ruth sat with Patterson on the other side. Both wore expressions of grim satisfaction. Judge Whitmore entered. He was older than Ruth, with silver hair and a face carved from the same unforgiving stone as the courthouse itself. Court is in session. We have 2 matters before us. First, the custody petition of Ruth Whitmore regarding her grandson, Samuel Granger. Second, assault charges against Caleb Granger. He looked at Caleb. How do you plead? Not guilty, Your Honor. So noted. Mrs. Whitmore, present your case. Ruth stood. Her voice was strong, certain. Your Honor, I petition for full custody of my grandson on the grounds that his father is unfit. Caleb Granger abandoned Samuel after his mother's death, has shown no interest in parenting, and now has created a dangerous, immoral environment by employing a woman of questionable character and living arrangements. She presented evidence, letters documenting Sam's care under her roof, testimony from townspeople about the improper household at the ranch, a doctor's statement about the psychological harm of unstable parenting. It was thorough, damning, built on half-truths and implications. When she finished, the judge looked at Caleb. Do you wish to contest these claims? Caleb stood. I do. On what grounds? On the grounds that I'm his father, that I love him, that I made mistakes, but I'm trying to fix them. Trying isn't good enough, Mr. Granger. Children need stability. He has stability at the ranch, with people who care about him, with an unmarried woman of ill repute, with a woman who's shown him more kindness in 3 weeks than this town has in 8 years. Murmurs from the gallery. The judge's gavel cracked. Mr. Granger, your personal opinions about this town's moral standards are irrelevant. What matters is the child's welfare. Then ask him. Caleb's voice rang out. Ask Sam what he wants. He's 8 years old, too young to make such decisions. Old enough to know if he's happy, old enough to know if he's loved. Ruth shot to her feet. Your Honor, the child has been poisoned against me by that woman. His judgment is compromised. That woman has a name. Mara stood. Every eye in the courtroom swiveled to her. And she'd like to be heard. Mrs. Hale, you're not party to these proceedings. I'm the reason for these proceedings. Mrs. Whitmore's entire case rests on my presence being harmful. I have a right to defend myself. The judge studied her. She saw him taking in her crutch, her body calculating whether she was worth listening to. You have 5 minutes. I won't need 5. Mara moved to the front, her crutch tapping rhythm. on the wooden floor. Your Honor, yeah, I came to Granger Ranch 3 weeks ago with nothing but a daughter, a crutch, and a willingness to work. Since then, that I've cooked every meal, taught 2 children to read and bake, stitched up wounded ranch hands. And yes, I've lived in the same house as 15 men. She turned to face the courtroom. Mrs. Whitmore claims this makes me immoral. I claim it makes me employed. I've worked harder in 3 weeks than most people in this room have worked in months. And the only thing questionable about my character is that I refuse to accept other people's definitions of my worth. Mrs. Hale, the judge interrupted, your work ethic isn't in question. Your suitability as a moral influence is. Then let me ask you something, Your Honor. What's more moral, a grandmother who tells an 8-year-old boy that his birth killed his mother and his father's sin caused it, or a cook who teaches him that bodies come in different forms, but all have value, that mistakes can be fixed, that love is shown through actions, not words? Ruth went red. I never said. You did. Sam told me himself. You've spent 8 years making that child feel responsible for his mother's death, making him believe he's unwanted, unloved. How dare you? I dare because someone has to speak truth in a room full of lies. Mara's voice rose. You want to talk about moral character? Let's talk about Hiram Patterson's moral character, about the men he hired to burn Caleb's barn, to threaten children, to run off cattle and beat a man unconscious. Patterson stood. Your Honor, these are slanderous accusations. Are they? Mara pulled the threatening note from her pocket, the one from the rock through her window. I have written proof. Leave, last warning. Next time we take more than property. This was thrown through my window hours before the barn burned. She turned to Patterson. I saw your men that night, recognized them from town. I can name them, describe them, and I will. A cripple's testimony against upstanding citizens. Patterson's voice dripped contempt. You expect anyone to believe that? I expect them to believe the evidence. A new voice cut through the murmurs. Every head turned. Tommy stood in the doorway. Behind him, 15 ranch hands, battered, bruised, but standing together. We have evidence, Tommy continued. We found this at the burn site. He held up a belt buckle, silver engraved with initials. HB P. Hiram Blackwood Patterson. Unless you're claiming you lost it, sir. Patterson's face went white, then red. That proves nothing. Could have been planted. Could have been, except 3 of us witnessed your men that night, saw their faces when the bandanas slipped. One of them was your nephew, James Patterson. Tommy's young face was fierce. You want to claim coincidence? The judge leaned forward. Mr. Patterson, do you deny employing your nephew? He works for me occasionally, but did he work for you the night the Granger barn burned? Patterson's mouth opened, closed. He was trapped, and he knew it. Your Honor, a woman's voice called from the back. The crowd parted. A woman in her 60s stepped forward. Mara recognized her, the shopkeeper who'd refused to sell supplies. Mrs. Henderson. The judge looked surprised. I have something to say. The shopkeeper's voice shook but held firm. About Mr. Patterson's business practices, about the pressure he puts on merchants, about the threats. Mrs. Henderson, I strongly advise, Patterson started. You can't threaten me anymore, Hiram. I'm done. She looked at the judge. He told us all not to sell to Granger Ranch. Said if we did, he'd call in our loans, foreclose on our properties. He controls the bank, see, and the railroad, and he uses that control to force compliance. Other voices rose, other merchants stepping forward, each with stories of Patterson's manipulation, his threats, his abuse of power. The judge's gavel cracked repeatedly. Order, order in this court. But the dam had broken. Truth was spilling out, unstoppable. Patterson tried to leave. Deputies blocked the door. Mr. Patterson, the judge said coldly, you'll remain seated. It seems we have additional matters to address. Ruth stood. Your Honor, this is irrelevant to the custody hearing. On the contrary, Mrs. Whitmore, if your case is built on Mr. Patterson's testimony and influence, and that influence is shown to be corrupt, it affects everything. He turned to Sam. Young man approached the bench. Sam looked at Mara. She nodded encouragement. The boy walked forward on shaking legs. stood before the judge with his father's gray eyes and his mother's courage. Samuel, I'm going to ask you some questions. Answer honestly. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Do you love your grandmother? Yes, sir. Do you want to live with her? No, sir. Why not? Sam's voice was small but clear. Because she makes me feel bad. About Mama dying, about being born, about my father. And you'd rather live with your father even though he gave you up once. He said he was sorry, said he'd made a mistake. People who apologize and try to fix things deserve second chances. Sam looked at Ruth. Grandma never apologizes. She just says I'm wrong. The courtroom was silent. And Mrs. Hale, the judge asked, how do you feel about her? She's kind. She teaches me things. She makes Papa smile. Sam's eyes filled with tears. She makes our house feel like a home. And I want her to stay. I want all of us to stay together. Like a family. Yes, sir. Like a family. The judge sat back, studied the faces before him. Caleb desperate and hopeful. Ruth righteously furious. Patterson cornered and dangerous. Mara standing tall despite her crutch. And Sam, a little boy who'd survived 8 years of being told he was unwanted, finding the courage to ask for what he needed. I'm ready to rule, the judge said. The courtroom held its breath. First, regarding the assault charges against Mr. Granger. Based on the testimony presented, including evidence of arson and vandalism against his property, I find that he acted in defense of his home. Charges dismissed. Caleb's shoulders sagged with relief. Second, regarding the custody petition. Mrs. Whitmore, your care of your grandson is acknowledged, but your methods of instilling guilt and shame are harmful, and your alliance with a man now implicated in criminal activity calls your judgment into question. Ruth gasped. Your Honor, you can't. I can and I am. Custody remains with Caleb Granger subject to the following conditions. Samuel will attend school in town. Mrs. Whitmore will have visitation rights every Sunday supervised, and Mr. Granger will demonstrate sustained commitment to parenting. He looked at Mara. Mrs. Hale, your presence at the ranch is not in itself inappropriate. However, appearances matter in a small community. I strongly suggest that Mr. Granger consider making your arrangement more permanent. Caleb stood. Your Honor, if you're suggesting what I think you're suggesting, I'm suggesting that if you intend to have an unmarried woman residing in your home, you should consider remedying that situation. The implication was clear. And third, the judge continued, his voice hardening. Mr. Patterson, you will remain for questioning regarding arson, intimidation, and corruption. Sheriff, take him into custody. This is outrageous, Patterson shouted as deputies approached. I'm a respected businessman. You can't. I can, and the territorial marshal will be very interested in your business practices. They led Patterson out, still protesting. Ruth followed, her face a mask of fury and defeat. The courtroom erupted, people talking, shouting, demanding explanations. Through it all, Mara felt Caleb's eyes on her. She turned, found him standing 3 feet away. You did it, he said. You beat them. We beat them. All of us. Sam barreled into his father's arms. Caleb caught him, held him tight, and finally let himself cry. Mara gathered Lily and stepped back to give them space. But Caleb's hand shot out, caught hers, pulled her close. No, he said. You don't get to stand apart anymore. You're part of this. Caleb. The judge said we should make it permanent. I agree. Her heart stopped. What are you saying? He dropped to one knee. Right there in the courthouse, surrounded by witnesses, with his son still clinging to him, and his future suddenly possible. Mara Hale, will you marry me? Not because a judge suggested it, not because it's convenient, but because I love you, because you make me brave, because I want to spend every day for the rest of my life watching you make bread and teach children and stand up to bullies who don't know what they're up against. Mara looked at this man who'd given her a job when no one else would, who'd paid her debts, who'd fought for her right to exist in a world that wanted her invisible. Yes, she said, but only if you promise one thing. Anything. Promise me we'll fight for people like us, people who don't fit, who need someone to stand up and say they matter. I promise. She pulled him to his feet and kissed him in front of God and Red Creek and everyone who'd ever said she wasn't good enough. The courtroom erupted again, this time with cheers. The wedding happened 1 week later. Not in the Red Creek Church where Constance Thornton could orchestrate disapproval, but at the ranch under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. The circuit judge who'd ruled in their favor agreed to officiate. Doc Harrison stood as witness along with every ranch hand healthy enough to attend. Red was there too, bandaged, but healing, his eyes bright with emotion he didn't bother hiding. Mara wore a dress she'd sewn herself from fabric Caleb had brought from Cheyenne. Deep green cotton that didn't try to hide her figure, but didn't apologize for it either. Lily had woven wildflowers into her mother's hair. Sam stood beside his father, clutching the rings with fierce concentration. When the judge asked if she took this man, Mara said, "I do," with a voice that carried across the yard. Caleb's response was quieter, but no less certain. The judge smiled. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mr. Granger, you may kiss your bride." Caleb kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life for permission. When they broke apart, Sam was crying. Happy tears this time. "Can I call you Ma now?" he asked Mara. She knelt, ignoring her protesting leg. "Only if you want to." "I want to." He threw his arms around her neck. "I want a family. A real one." "Then that's what we'll be." Lily joined the embrace. "Does this mean we're really staying forever, baby?" "Promise." Caleb knelt beside them. "I promise. On my honor, on this land, on everything I am. This is your home, our home, for as long as we live." The four of them held each other while the ranch hands cheered and the mountains looked on and the future spread before them like a promise. The reception was simple. Food Mara had prepared with Sam and Lily's help. Coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. The quiet satisfaction of people who'd survived something together. Ruth Whitmore appeared near sunset. Mara tensed, but the older woman's face was different, softer. Defeated or surrendered, she couldn't tell. "I came to apologize," Ruth said quietly, "to Sam, to you, to Caleb." "We're listening," Caleb set his arm around Mara's waist. "I was wrong. About everything. I was so angry about Sarah's death that I needed someone to blame. And you were there, Caleb. So I blamed you. And when you gave Sam to me, I used him to punish you." Her voice broke. "But he's not a weapon. He's a child. My grandson. And I've hurt him more than I've helped him." Sam stepped forward. "Grandma, I still love you. I don't deserve it. Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway." The 8-year-old's voice was wise beyond his years. "Ma says forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about healing." Ruth looked at Mara. "You taught him that. I'm teaching both of them. About grace, about second chances, about how families fix what's broken instead of throwing it away. May I still visit on Sundays like the judge said?" "You may," Caleb said. "But if you ever tell Sam he's responsible for his mother's death again, those visits end. Permanently." "I understand, and I promise. No more guilt, no more blame." Ruth touched Sam's face gently. "Your mama loved you, she wanted you, and she'd be so proud of the boy you're becoming." Sam hugged her. She held him like he was precious. When she left, Mara felt something release in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of peace. The sentencing hearing happened 1 week later. Mara attended, sitting in the back row with Caleb's hand in hers. Patterson stood before the judge. His expensive suit rumpled, his face haggard. The man who'd controlled Red Creek for a decade now stood alone. "Hiram Blackwood Patterson," the territorial judge intoned, "you have been found guilty of arson, conspiracy to commit fraud, intimidation of witnesses, and corruption of public officials. Before I pass sentence, do you have anything to say?" Patterson's mouth opened, closed. For the first time since Mara had known him, he had no words. Nothing. The judge's voice was cold. No justification, no excuse. "My daughter died," Patterson said, finally, his voice breaking. "My only child, and I needed someone to blame. You needed to destroy innocent people to make yourself feel powerful." The judge leaned forward. "Your daughter's death was a tragedy. What you did with your grief was a choice, a criminal choice." Patterson's gaze found Mara across the courtroom. She saw something in his eyes, not quite remorse, but recognition, an acknowledgement that he'd been wrong. She nodded once, not forgiveness, but witness. 10 years in territorial prison, the judge pronounced, and a fine of $50,000 to be paid to the victims of your campaigns of intimidation. Bailiff, remove him. As they led Patterson away, he stopped beside Mara's row. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. It's not worth Mara replied, but it's something. Then he was gone. News of Patterson's arrest spread through the territory. The investigation uncovered years of corruption, bribery, intimidation, fraud. He was sentenced to 10 years in territorial prison. His empire collapsed overnight. The bank was seized, his lands sold at auction. Caleb bought the water rights Patterson had controlled, paid fair price with money he'd been saving for decades. The Granger Ranch doubled in size, then tripled. Red Creek had to rebuild without Patterson's influence. Some businesses failed. Others adapted. Slowly, the town learned to operate on honest principles instead of fear. Constance Thornton visited the ranch 1 month after the wedding, brought a basket of preserves and an awkward apology. I was wrong about you, she said to Mara. I judged without knowing, spoke without understanding. I'm sorry. Apologies are nice, Mara said. Changing is better. I'm trying. We started a ladies' aid society, real charity, not the performative kind, helping women who need it without judgment. I thought, would you like to join? Mara considered. On one condition, no one gets turned away because of how they look or what their circumstances are. Agreed. It wasn't friendship. Not yet. But it was a start. 3 months after the wedding, a wagon arrived at the ranch. A young woman climbed down, limping, scared, holding a baby. Mara met her in the yard. Can I help you? I heard. Someone told me there is a place here for women like us. Like us, how about women who don't fit, who need a chance? Mara smiled. Can you work? I can sew, I can clean, Can you learn? Yes. Then welcome home. The woman's name was Sarah Wells. She stayed in the small room off the kitchen while Mara and Caleb built a separate cottage for her and her baby. She was the first. Over the years, there would be others. Women running from violence. Women with disabilities. Women who'd been told they were worthless. The Granger Ranch became known throughout Wyoming territory as a place where broken people could rebuild. Where worth was measured by work, not appearance. Where family was chosen, not just given. Mara Granger, 43 years old, stood in her expanded kitchen and surveyed her kingdom. The ranch had grown, 8,000 acres now, the most prosperous in Wyoming. Caleb had built it piece by piece, buying struggling neighbors' land at fair prices, creating an empire built on water rights and good management. But Mara's empire was different. She ran Granger Bread Company from a commercial bakery they'd built on the property. Her sourdough fed 3 territories now. Orders came by telegram from as far as Denver. The sign above the bakery read, "A woman's worth is in her work, not her walk." She'd employed 23 women over the years, trained them, paid them fair wages, helped them build lives. Some stayed, some moved on, and all of them carried forward the lesson you're worth more than what the world says about you. Sam appeared in the doorway, 25 years old now, tall like his father, but with his mother's gentle eyes. His wife Anna was pregnant with their second child. Ma, the circuit judge is here, says he needs to talk to you. Mara wiped flour from her hands. About what? Wouldn't say, but he looks official. The judge who'd married her and Caleb 17 years ago sat in the parlor, older now, but still sharp-eyed. Mrs. Granger, thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Judge? It's what I can do for you. The territorial legislature passed the Mara Granger Employment Act in 1912. It's been adopted by 4 states already: Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, and Utah. Another 6 are considering similar legislation. By next year, we estimate 12,000 disabled workers across the West will have legal protection because of what you started. Protections against being fired or refused employment based on physical differences. He pulled out a document. They want to name it after you. The Mara Granger Employment Act. Mara's throat closed. That's not necessary. It is. Your work here has changed how people think. The women you've employed, the lives you've changed, the proof that disability doesn't mean inability. You've built a case study that the legislature can't ignore. I just gave people jobs. You gave them dignity. There's a difference. After he left, Mara sat alone with the proposed law. Read through the protections, the guarantees, the acknowledgement that worth came from work, not form. It was everything she'd needed when she was 26 and desperate, everything she'd fought to prove. Written into law, for everyone who'd come after, she cried into her flour-dusted hands and let herself feel the weight of what they'd built. Mara was 87 when the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1917, though Wyoming women had voted since before she was born. She cast her first ballot with Lily, now 45, and married to Tommy, yes, the young cowboy grown into a fine man. Sam's daughter Emily stood with them, 17 and fierce. 3 generations of Granger women voting. The ranch was 15,000 acres now, run by Sam's eldest son. 5th generation preparing to take over. Lily ran a school on the property, free education for any child regardless of background. She'd learned from her mother that knowledge was power and power should be shared. Sam managed the cattle operation, 300 head of breeding stock, supplied ranches across 4 territories. But Granger Bread Company shipped 40,000 loaves per month across 3 territories. Annual revenue, $22,000. Profit margin, 18%. Every penny over living wages was reinvested in training programs for women who needed a second chance. She'd trained 52 women over the years. Some stayed in Wyoming. Some opened their own bakeries in other territories. All of them carried forward the recipes her mother had brought from Germany and the lessons Mara had learned in Fire and Flour. Caleb died that year, peacefully in his sleep with Mara's hand in his. His last words were, "Thank you for saving me." She'd kissed his weathered face and whispered back, "We saved each other." The funeral brought half of Wyoming, cowboys who'd worked for him, women he'd employed, families he'd helped. The governor sent condolences, but it was the children who mattered. Sam and Lily reading from their father's journal about how a crippled cook had taught him that love was worth the risk. Grandchildren placing wildflowers on his grave. Great-grandchildren, too young to understand, but sensing the loss. Mara stood at the graveside and felt the weight of 40 years together. 40 years of bread and battles, of raising children and building legacies, of proving that broken people could build kingdoms if given the chance. That night she returned to her kitchen. The space had been updated, modernized, but it still smelled the same. Yeast and flour and promise. She pulled out her mother's recipe book. The pages were nearly transparent now, stained with decades of use. She turned to the sourdough recipe, the one she'd made that first day at the ranch, the bread that had saved everything. And she began to write. To whoever reads this is not just a recipe. It's proof that what the world calls worthless can build kingdoms. That bodies come in all forms but all have value. That love found in unexpected places can change everything. I came to this ranch with nothing but a crutch and a prayer. I'm leaving it with a family that spans 5 generations of business that feeds thousands and laws that protect people like me. The bread that saved the ranch became the bread that fed a territory. But more than that, it became proof that what the world calls broken can build legacies. You just have to be brave enough to need. Mara Elizabeth Granger, 1915. She closed the book and set it aside for Emily, who'd inherit it next. And that's how it happened. Mara finished, her 89-year-old voice strong despite the years. That's how a woman society deemed worthless built a kingdom from flour and fire. Emily Jr., her great-granddaughter, clutched the recipe book with reverent hands. Is that all true? Every word, every word. What happened to the ranch? Sam's grandson runs it now. 6th generation, 20,000 acres. We supply beef to 5 states. And the bread company, your grandmother runs it, employs 147 women. We're the largest bakery operation west of the Mississippi. Emily Jr.'s eyes shone. Because you refused to quit. Because I learned that kingdoms aren't built by perfect people. They're built by people who refuse to accept other people's definitions of their worth. Around them, the Lincoln Memorial crowd ebbed and flowed. The young woman Mara had seen earlier, the one limping and dismissed, stood nearby listening. Mara caught her eye, saw the pain there, the familiar fear. She beckoned the woman closer. "What's your name, dear?" "Margaret, ma'am." The woman's voice was barely audible. "Margaret, do you work?" I try, but no one will hire me. They say I'm too slow." "Can you learn?" "Yes, ma'am." Mara pulled a card from her handbag. "This is my granddaughter's bakery in Cheyenne. Tell her I sent you. Tell her your family." But I'm not. Family isn't about blood. It's about who you choose to stand with, who you choose to fight for. She pressed the card into Margaret's hand. Go, learn, build, and when you're strong, help someone else who needs it. Margaret left clutching the card like a lifeline. Emily Jr. watched her go. Will she make it? She'll make it because she has what I had, desperation and determination in equal measure. Mara looked at the Lincoln statue, at the face of a man who'd been called ugly but built a nation. That's enough to change the world. She pulled Emily Jr. close. Around them, the dedication ceremony continued. Speeches about unity, about sacrifice, about the cost of freedom. But Mara wasn't listening to the speeches. She was listening to her own heartbeat, steady and strong despite 89 years of fighting. She was thinking about Caleb, about Sam and Lily, about 52 women given chances, about laws bearing her name, about bread that had fed thousands and proved that worth came from within, about kingdoms built from flour and fire. Great-grandma Emily Jr.'s voice was soft. What does it feel like knowing you changed everything? Mara thought about that first day, standing in the Omaha train station with spit on her boot and $3 in her pocket, about the ranch appearing on the horizon like judgment, about Caleb's winter gray eyes and the first biscuits she'd made in that kitchen, about choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier, about fighting when surrender was expected, about building when destruction was predicted. It feels, she said slowly, like yeast rising, like something small and humble becoming something that feeds multitudes, like taking the ingredients the world gives you even when they're bitter and making something that sustains life. She handed the recipe book to Emily Jr. This is yours now. The recipes, the stories, the responsibility to keep fighting, to keep building, to keep proving that what the world calls broken can create beauty. I'll guard it with my life. Don't guard it, share it. That's the whole point. The dedication ceremony ended. The crowd began to disperse. Mara stood with difficulty, her old legs still twisted, her old crutch still necessary. Emily Jr. steadied her. As they walked through the crowd, Mara saw them everywhere. Women in pants working, women voting leading building. The world she'd helped create, not perfect, never perfect, but better, infinitely better than the one that had told her she was worthless. They made it to the street. A motorcar waited to take them back to the hotel. Before she climbed in, Mara looked back at the memorial one last time. Lincoln's face gazed out over the city, patient, determined, proof that ugly ducklings could become swans, that society's rejects could become its saviors, that kingdoms could be built by the broken. She smiled. Then she climbed into the car with her great-granddaughter and the recipe book and the weight of a legacy that would outlive them all. The motorcar pulled away. Washington faded behind them, but the future stretched ahead, golden and possible, and built on foundations of flower and courage and the stubborn refusal to disappear. Mara Granger closed her eyes and let herself rest. She'd earned it. The bread that saved the ranch had become the bread that built a dynasty, and the woman the world called worthless had proved that kingdoms aren't built by perfect people. They're built by people brave enough to need.